Memory Improvement by the Office of Formation and Discipleship, Archdiocese of Atlanta. Welcome to this presentation on memory improvement. My name is Bill Clark. I will be your presenter for this session. This is another in a series of professional development topics brought to you by the Office of Formation and Discipleship within the Archdiocese of Atlanta. If you have any questions during the presentation, please direct them to me by phone at 404-920-7635 or by email at wclark@archatl.com. Let us open our session with a prayer. Dear Father, be with me and give me an understanding heart so that I can better utilize the mental power you have given me. I am too weak at times to fully understand the remarkable capability you have put in my hands. Sometimes it is difficult for me to remember things. I lose my confidence and become upset that I am imperfect. Lord, I ask you to strengthen my memory power and grant me your abundant grace so that I may use your gifts with enduring confidence. Let your power engulf me, Lord, and let every unwanted fear flee from me. Send me help from above and make me a success in all I do in your name. I know your love for me is constant. Thank you for watching over me. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Why is memory important? Well, every occupation or position in life requires a certain amount of memory capability. Sometimes memory is vital to save a life or prevent a disaster. An old adage comes to mind: use it or lose it. In other words, if you don't use your memory capability, you're likely to lose it. The brain, including the memory capability, must be used and maintained or it will diminish. Aging requires a stronger commitment to maintain brain functionality, especially memory. And a good memory can become a personal differentiation in your career. Now, let's review the agenda, or those things we're going to cover in our session today. First, why is memory an issue? Next, what is normal and not normal memory capability? We'll cover some memory quotes to set the stage. Then we'll discuss and define what memory is and how does memory work. We'll talk about the subconscious mind, the all-powerful mind hidden deep within the brain. We'll discuss a concept called neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to restore itself in a remarkable way. Then we'll talk about memory improvement tips, both for your mind and body. And we'll do some memory exercises. And lastly, we'll close with some memory improvement focus points. Why is memory such an important issue? The number one thing I would like you to take away from this session is this: a good memory is the result of an active brain. I repeat, a good memory is the result of an active brain. A poor memory is the result of an unexercised brain. In other words, like the quote earlier said, use it or lose it. What is the difference between the two? Well, let me explain. Let me discuss the evolution of the brain as a way to better explain why you might have memory issues. Well, if you're under 25, you rarely experience these kinds of issues. But if you're over 45, you may regularly experience memory issues that we tend to call senior moments. Why do these happen? Well, from infancy through childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, and early career, our brains are constantly being exposed to new things. Just think about it. From pre-K, kindergarten, elementary, middle and high school, college, graduate school, and early career, you're constantly being exposed to newness. Each year you're in a new classroom. You have new classmates, new teachers. You take new subjects every year. You're involved with new organizations and new activities. Therefore, the young brain is always active, always engaged. Now let's talk about what happens to the brain in adulthood. Sometime in the early career phase of life, we begin to get the instinct to, as we say, settle down. We get married, have children, settle into a job, buy a home. We begin to associate with colleagues, neighbors, fellow parishioners. Whether we recognize it consciously or not, we become creatures of habit. We experience the same old every day of our lives. We rarely get involved in new activities. The brain goes into a state of unintentional idleness. In effect, we put it on the shelf and it stops learning. The brain is no longer active and engaged as it was when we were younger. What is the effect of this unintentional idleness? If you fail to adequately exercise a muscle, it will lose tone and atrophy. If you fail to adequately exercise the brain, it too will lose fitness and capability. Idleness causes the brain to lose its effectiveness to store, encode, and retrieve information, which is what memory is all about. The bottom line is this: if you want to maintain a healthy and active brain with a great memory, do the things that you did when you were young. Namely, constantly engage your brain in new things, new activities. Now let's review some memory quotes to further set the stage for our discussion. Quote from John Irving: "Your memory is a monster. You forget. It doesn't. It simply files things away. It keeps things for you or hides things from you and summons them to your recall with a will of its own. You think you have a memory, but it has you." The next quote, by Edgar Allan Poe: "If you wish to forget anything on the spot, make a note that this thing is to be remembered." And finally, from Cormac McCarthy: "Just remember that the things you put into your head are there forever. You might want to think about that. You forget some things, don't you? Yes, you forget what you want to remember, and you remember what you want to forget." Now, what is normal forgetfulness? Like why you went into the kitchen or upstairs. You stand there and you just can't remember. Or where you left your car, your keys, your purse, your wallet, your briefcase. We all experience them. Or what you went into the store to get. You failed to make a list and you just can't remember. Or the name of someone you've just met. Or the name of something. There it is, you just can't remember what that thingamabob is called. This is normal. You are not in the early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's. It's just that our short-term memory erases trivial, unimportant information so that it can make room for more important information. Now, when are some of these memory issues a cause for concern? Well, for instance, when multitasking becomes difficult, you're working on one thing, then you can't recall the other thing you were supposed to do. Or you get lost in familiar places. You routinely lose your car. You forget the names of close friends or relatives. You're not able to recognize faces or colors or shapes or some words. Or you frequently forget what you were talking about. You stop in the middle of the sentence and you just can't go on. You don't remember. These symptoms could be due to other issues like depression, grief, stress, or lack of sleep, or they could be early signs of a memory problem. Okay, let's get basic. What is memory? Well, memory is our ability, the ability of your brain to encode, store, and subsequently retrieve information and past experiences which are stored within the human brain. Now, let's test your memory. We have a little memory trivia quiz for you. You'll have 5 seconds to answer each question. First question: who painted the Mona Lisa? Number 2, who was the drummer for the Beatles? Number 3, on the third day of Christmas, my true love sent to me what? Number 4, what's the smallest country in the world? Number 5, who was the first man to walk on the moon? And number 6, what man broke the 4-minute mile? Okay, here are the answers. Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa. Ringo Starr was the drummer for the Beatles. You received 3 French hens on the third day of Christmas. Vatican City is the smallest country in the world. And Neil Armstrong from the little town of Wapakoneta, Ohio, was the first man to walk on the moon. And lastly, Roger Bannister, an Englishman, was the first man to break the unsurmountable 4-minute mile way back in 1954. The point of this question is that these are things that we knew about. For many, it happened within our lifetimes. Others are things that we just should know from our life experience. But the important thing is whether or not your brain had the ability to suddenly and quickly pull out the information. Now let's talk about how the memory works. It does 4 things. It sends out information from the 5 senses to the brain. It encodes information by subject and relative importance. Then it stores information It retains the information for possible future use. And lastly, it will retrieve information. When we want to remember something, the brain locates it and returns it to our consciousness. So it sends information, it encodes information, it stores information, and lastly, it retrieves information. How well the brain handles this process is what we call either a good memory or forgetfulness, a bad memory. Now let's talk about the power of the subconscious mind. We have two levels of mind, our conscious and our subconscious. The conscious mind is engaged throughout the day when we're awake, we're doing things, we're actively involved. The subconscious mind is buried deep within the inner mind, and it has information within it that we would like to retrieve if we can only get to it. So the subconscious mind is the storage room for everything that we have ever experienced in our life. It contains all of our memories, all of our skills, our knowledge, a recall of every situation we've ever been involved in, all images, everything. It's all there. The proof that we have a subconscious mind can occur when we are hypnotized, when it is possible for a trained psychologist or psychiatrist to help us enter into our subconscious mind under hypnosis and be able to recall intimate, exacting details of things which happened years and years ago. Think of the subconscious mind as a computer hard drive. The information is always there, it's never lost. We can retrieve it if we can remember the keywords or associations that help the brain remember where it is stored. Our conscious mind deals with the here and now. Older memories are put further back in the queue. Our memory is better with recent things than older things. The brain is near perfect in collecting, encoding, and storing information. So when we compare the capability of the brain, which is remarkable in its ability to encode and store information, and we compare that to our memory, which is far less perfect, then we have to figure out how we can jog our memory and cause it to be more effective. Since the memory is less perfect, it lets us down if we can't remember key information or associations that will help us search out the information. Our ability to remember key information depends upon how well we maintain and exercise our brain. Now let's talk about a big new term, neuroplasticity, or the ability that the brain has to basically regain and resurrect functionality and efficiency. In effect, it's a game saver that the brain has that we can learn to use. If, I say if, we commit to a brain exercise and improvement program. In effect, we're saying that the brain has the ability to regain and resurrect itself if we are willing to exercise it and allow it to improve its functionality. Now we're going to deal with brain and memory improvement, or how can we exercise our brain. We'll present 12 tips or techniques you can use to exercise your brain so that it in effect then improves your memory. Let's start with tip number 1. Get sufficient exercise and sleep. You need adequate exercise because when you exercise your body, you're also exercising your brain. If you treat your body well, you will have enhanced ability to process and recall information. Physical exercise actually does increase the oxygen flow to your brain. Next, get adequate sleep. Sleep is absolutely necessary for memory consolidation, which occurs during the deepest stage of your sleep, which is usually right after you fall to sleep. It's called the REM stage, rapid eye movement stage, in which your eye, without you knowing about it, is fluttering. Like the eye on a computer as it begins to grind away information. So your brain is now consolidating information. So if you don't get adequate sleep or no sleep, that consolidation is not going to occur and you're not going to have good memory retention. The second brain and memory improvement tip is make time for friends and fun. We tend to think of serious activities to stimulate the brain, like working a New York Times crossword puzzle or mastering a new chess strategy. But research shows that just hanging out with friends or doing light-hearted pastimes actually improves your cognitive skills. Engaging relationships stimulate our brains. Interacting with others is one of the best kinds of brain activity because each situation introduces a new and exciting and challenging opportunity for the brain. The third brain and memory improvement tip is that laughter is good for your brain. Laughter is a great medicine for the brain, the memory, and the body. Laughter engages multiple regions of the brain simultaneously. It's important that you learn how to laugh at yourself. When you hear laughter, move towards it. Investigate things that are happy, where people are having a good time. You want to spend time with fun, playful people. Lighten up. You can, for instance, keep a toy on your desk. Put up a funny poster. Choose a funny computer screensaver. Hang photos of yourself, family, or friends having fun. And pay attention to children. They are the experts on having fun. The fourth brain and memory improvement tip is to keep stress in check. Keep stress in check. Stress is perhaps the brain's worst enemy. Chronic stress or ongoing stress actually destroys brain cells and damages the brain's storage area. Meditation, we have found, is the best way to relieve stress and reduce depression, anxiety, chronic pain, and high blood pressure. Meditation also improves focus, concentration, creativity, learning, and your reasoning skills. So, let's look at some effective meditation techniques. Let's review 4 meditation techniques that you can use to reduce stress. The first is guided meditation, where you listen to something, a recording or a tape, or read something that takes you to a relaxing place. For instance, imagine yourself being at the shore, walking along the shore as the waves, come up, touch your feet and your ankles. You allow yourself to take your mind there, and in so doing, it takes your mind away from the things that are causing stress. The second medication technique is prayer, something we Catholics should always be familiar with. Pray this time using your own words. Make them up. Imagine that you're talking to God. Reflect on the meaning of the words. Think of yourself as writing a letter to God. As a part of that, you could say a rosary. But prayerful meditation on the mysteries of our faith is a way to take you out of a stressful environment. Or do the Lectio Divina, a Benedictine tradition of reading Scripture, meditating, and praying. A third technique is deep breathing, where you relax, take deep breaths all the way from your diaphragm. Deep, deep breaths rather than shallow breaths from your chest. Continue this process until you feel calm. The fourth technique is to exercise, to walk, to run, to do aerobics, to let your body and mind unwind. Any or all of these four techniques are good ways to learn how to reduce stress and in so doing improve the functionality of your brain and memory. The fifth tip is to eat a brain boosting diet, a diet that is rich in omega-3 foods like oily fish, salmon, halibut, tuna, or walnuts, flaxseed, beans, spinach, broccoli, soybeans. Or limit calories and saturated fats. Reduce red meat intake, whole milk, butter, cheese, cream, and ice cream. Eat more fruits and veggies, leafy green vegetables like spinach, kale, romaine, chard, arugula, and fruit like bananas, apricots, and mangoes. Drink green tea. Green tea contains powerful antioxidants that protect against free radicals that can damage brain cells. Try to use alcohol in moderation. Stick to wine, 1 or 2 glasses a day. Red wine in particular boosts blood flow and reduces the risk of Alzheimer's. Choose complex carbohydrates. Avoid simple carbs like sugar, white bread, refined grains. Choose complex carbs like whole grains, brown rice, oatmeal, high fiber cereal, lentils, and beans. Avoid processed foods that contain high levels of sodium. Consider going to a gluten-free diet. These are all ways to help your body by eating the right kinds of things. Let's stop for a moment and reflect on the memory improvement tips that we've reviewed so far. Have you noticed a trend? Well, the first 5 tips deal with things that improve your body. The key point is this: the brain is inextricably paired with the body. So things done to improve your body will automatically improve your brain and memory function. The sixth memory improvement tip is to give your brain a regular and intentional workout. Muscles and memory require that you use it or lose it. So you need to exercise both your brain and your body. Brain stimulation can happen when you do things like work crossword puzzles or play cards or chess or read or write or work equations or try to solve problems, take tests, etc. Body stimulation can occur by trying to play a musical instrument, or juggling, or ping pong, or knitting, or pottery, or walking, or running, or weightlifting. Any number of things, especially in the aerobic areas, that causes you to be stimulated, the body to be stimulated, to make you sweat. All of these things are good for your body. They're also good for your brain. There are three criteria for brain workout activities. First, they have to be new. So, no matter how stimulating they may be, how much you enjoy them, they must be new in order to be intellectually demanding. For instance, if you work a crossword puzzle and you continue to work the same kinds of crossword puzzle, it's good, but it's not as good as if you tried a totally different approach to stimulating the brain. Second criteria, it must be challenging. It must expand on your knowledge, like learning a new language, or playing a new instrument, or working a new type of puzzle, or engaging in a new activity. The third characteristic is they must be fun. You have to be interested and engaged in order to keep your attention and to cause your brain to get excited and enthusiastic about what you're doing. Tip number 7 is to use mnemonic techniques. The M is silent in mnemonics. It's simply an association with a visual image, a sentence, or a word to help you remember something. For instance, you can create a visual image. If you're trying to remember Rosa Parks and what she did, you can picture her sitting on a park bench surrounded by roses to represent her first name and waiting for her bus to pull up. So that's a visual image that will always allow you to imagine that encounter that Rosa Parks had during the Civil Rights era. A second mnemonic technique is to use acrostics, in which the first letter of each word represents the initial for what you want to remember. For instance, if you're trying to remember the famous sentence that Neil Armstrong said when he first stepped on the moon, which was, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Take the first letter from each of the words. For instance, the first 5 are O, S, S, F, M. It's easier to remember those 5 letters than it is the whole expression, but by getting you started, that will help you remember the entire expression. A third mnemonic technique is called an acronym, where the first letter of key words are used to remember or to create a new word. For instance, the acronym HOMES, HOMES, can be used to remember the 5 Great Lakes: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. A fourth mnemonic technique are rhymes and alliteration. For instance, 30 days has September, April, June, and November is a way to cause you to remember the months of the year with only 30 days. A fifth technique is called chunking, where you break a long list into smaller chunks or pieces. For instance, you break a 10-digit phone number down into three sets of numbers, like 770, 355, 6174, as opposed to all of them strung together. The eighth brain and memory improvement tip is to repeat. One of the golden rules of learning and memory is to repeat, repeat, repeat. The more often you repeat something, the greater probability there will be for your brain to remember it. The brain responds to repetition. Examples: taking notes in addition to listening to what's being said. Repeating a name one or more times after you hear it or after you've been introduced to someone. Paraphrasing or repeating back to someone what someone has said so that it makes a bigger impression on your brain. Or reading a book before or after seeing a movie will help you remember what happened in the movie itself. The ninth tip is to organize. Get yourself organized if you want to improve your memory. For instance, use tools like your daily planner or smartphone or your computer to capture things you want to remember. Write down and organize information in a diary or a journal. Create daily, weekly, monthly to-do lists. Jot down key points of conversations, thoughts, ideas, meeting notes, experiences, and whatnot. Because when you write them down, they make a better impression on your memory. Review current and previous day's entries in the morning or before going to bed as a way to get them into your memory more effectively. And importantly, keep a pen or notepad on your nightstand to capture thoughts while you're beginning to fall asleep or while you're in your twilight or beginning to wake up. It's those things that you think you will never, ever remember, but then when you wake up in the morning, they're gone. So find a way to capture them. Tip number 10 is to visualize. Learn how to visualize. For instance, remembering faces and names is a challenge for most of us. Try this technique. Repeat a name one or more times after you've met someone in the first minute. Then associate the name with an image or a distinguishing characteristic. For example, do a visual image. If you meet Sandy and you want to remember the name, link Sandy with a beach. Put a picture in your head of Sandy on the beach. And whenever you see Sandy, you will think of Sandy on the beach and you will remember the name. Look for a distinguishing characteristic. For instance, Harry wears horn-rimmed glasses. Therefore, in your mind, you picture Harry as the horned owl. So whenever you see Harry, you think about the horned owl and you immediately remember the name Harry. Tip number 11 to improve your brain and memory is to use relational cues. Cue yourself by relating the word, name, or fact. For instance, if you can't remember the name of your first grade teacher, take yourself back to that classroom. Imagine yourself being there. Look around. See your classmates. Try to remember how the person was dressed, how they talked, what they did. By immersing yourself in this memory, there's a good probability that the name of that teacher will pop into your head. Other ways to use relational cues would include: use alarms or timers to remind you of tasks or appointments. Don't just rely on your brain to make that happen. Use something to help your brain. Or place notes where you can't miss them. Put them on your dashboard, on your computer monitor screen, or next to your telephone, or in front of the door. A favorite technique that I use, I just set it in front of the garage door so that when I go out to get in my car, I have to stumble over it in order to get to my car. Or if you want to order tickets to a play, leave a newspaper ad for the play near your computer. These are techniques that you can use to help you remember what you want to do. The 12th and final improvement tip is to pay attention. You can't remember something if it never got into your brain, into your memory in the first place. It won't be there if you didn't pay attention when you were receiving the information. Studies have indicated that it takes about 8 seconds of intense focus to process a piece of information into your memory. If you're easily distracted, you won't get it into your memory. So you need to learn to concentrate. Focus on what you want to remember. Create the right environment for concentrating, and you will remember things far more effectively. Let's do a picture memory exercise to test your memory. You'll be shown a picture. Actually, it's a combination picture with a lot of different images. You'll have 1 minute to study the picture. Do not take notes. Attempt to memorize as many images as you can. Are you ready? Let's begin. Here's the picture. Okay, time's up. There were 49 different images on the picture. How many do you remember? List them on a piece of paper while they are fresh in your memory. Then, on the next slide, you'll see the list of all 49. Here's the list of all 49 images. How many were you able to remember? Let's do another picture exercise. But this time, see if you can do better with this picture by sorting or chunking the images into categories like animals, plants and flowers, food, things.